Can you hear me? Okay, and you can see the slide? Okay. So we'll wait for 1 or 2 minutes, then we'll start, inshallah. So, okay, should we start? Yes?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we will start, okay? So today's lecture is very important, that is necrosis, okay? This is a very important lecture, and necrosis means when the cell dies, when the cell dies, it is called as cell death. The cell dies, cell death is called as a necrosis, okay? So today we will cover necrosis. So see, I have, that there is a normal cell, okay? The normal cell, when it is performing its function, it is a normal cell, it is called as a homeostasis, okay? The cell is normal, okay? So when there is little stress, the cell undergoes cell adaptation. And this adaptation lecture I have taken in the previous block. What are the various cell adaptations? Can you tell me? Yes, very right, very good. So whenever there is little stress, the cell undergoes adaptation. Adaptation means hypertrophy, hyperplasia, metaplasia, atrophy. So we have covered this in block. So when the cell is subjected to little stress, it undergoes adaptation. But when the stress is more, okay, when the stress is more and the cell is not able to adapt, the cell will undergo injury. That is called as a cell injury. Okay. Then when the injury is mild, the cell will recover. That is called a reversible injury. When the injury is mild, the cell will recover and it will convert itself into a normal cell. Okay. But when the injury is very severe, when the injury is very severe and it is very progressive means it is continuous. When the cell injury is severe and progressive, it is called as irreversible injury. Okay. And irreversible injury, at that time the cell will die, and that is called as a cell death. And there are two types of cell death: necrosis and apoptosis. Okay. So today we are going to study only necrosis. The next lecture, 9 o'clock, Dr. Sauda is taking, that is apoptosis. Okay. So what is the difference? Both are cell death, but what is the difference? Necrosis means the cell dies due to injury. Okay. And apoptosis means the cell kills itself. That is the suicide. Suicide. Like, some person, when there is a lot of stress, this person, he does suicide. So the cell kills itself. That is called as the apoptosis. And due to injury, when the cell dies, it is called as necrosis. So there are two types of cell death: necrosis and apoptosis. Now this is, I told you, there is a reversible injury. When the injury is mild, the cell will convert into a normal cell. But when the cell injury is severe, it is irreversible injury. Irreversible injury will cause cell death, necrosis and apoptosis. So this is irreversible cell injury. When there will be irreversible cell injury, when there is continuous damage, when there is severe damage to the cell cannot recover. The injury becomes irreversible and the cell cannot recover and it dies. So there are two types of cell death, that is necrosis and apoptosis. Necrosis, the cell dies due to the injury, and apoptosis, the cell kills itself. It is a suicide. Now see, this is the normal cell. I will tell you, this is the normal cell, and this is the pathway of necrosis, and this is the pathway of apoptosis. So today we are going to see necrosis. So what happens whenever there is injury? What happens? The cell membrane is damaged. Because the cell membrane, you can see the cell membrane is damaged. Because of the cell membrane is damaged, the water will enter the cell. Okay, the water from outside will enter the cell, and what will happen? The cell will swell. The cell will become large. So you can see the cell is increasing in size. The cell will increase in size, and also the plasma membrane, the membrane of the cell, it will protrude like you can see. These are the membrane blebs. You can see these are the membrane blebs. So what will happen in necrosis? The water will enter inside the cell. The cell will increase in size, swelling of the cell. The membrane will protrude out. That is called the membrane blebs. And also there is swelling of the internal organs. Which are the internal organs of the cell? Mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum. So all these also will undergo swelling. So there is a swelling of the endoplasmic reticulum, swelling of the mitochondria. So everything will swell, the cell will enlarge in size. Finally, what happens when the cell is too much enlarged in size? The cell will burst. The cell will burst and the plasma membrane will break. You can see the cell membrane is breaking. The cell membrane will break, and what will happen? The cell will rupture. All the organelles, you can see all the organelles, they will come out. They will go out of the cell, and you know what will happen? The inflammation, the inflammatory cells will come, like neutrophils, macrophages, and they will digest the cell. They will digest these organelles, and they will also digest. They will secrete one enzyme which is called as the lysosomes. Okay, so these inflammatory cells will secrete lysosomes, and they will digest the cell. So this is the area. This is the pathway of necrosis. So what will happen in the normal cell? Whenever there is necrosis, the cell will swell, increase in size, all the organs inside will swell, then the cell membrane will break, all the organelle will come outside, and it will be digested by the inflammatory cell. This is necrosis. Now what happens in apoptosis? Apoptosis, the cell kills itself. Okay, so what will happen? The cell necrosis, the cell is increasing in size, swelling, but in apoptosis the cell will become small in size. You can see the cell is becoming small in size. It is shrinkage in size, and also the organs will become small in size. You can see the endoplasmic reticulum, the nucleus, all are becoming small in size. Finally, what will happen? The cell will break into small pieces. You can see these small pieces, apoptotic body. You can see these are the apoptotic body. These are the small, cell will break into small bodies, and finally it will be these small bodies, apoptotic bodies, will be digested by the phagocytosis, and there will be phagocytosis of these small bodies, and the cell will undergo suicide, that is, it will kill itself. It is apoptosis. This will be covered in detail in the next lecture at 9 o'clock. Okay, so today we are going to see only the necrosis. So you understood necrosis. So you can see the cell is swelling inside. Finally, the cell is breaking. All the organelles coming out, and it will be digested by the inflammatory cells. Now, see whenever there is necrosis, there is damage to the membrane. The damage to the membrane is so severe that the cell will rupture. The lysosomal enzyme from the phagocytes, inflammatory cells, it will enter the cytoplasm, and it will digest the cell. Okay, and also the cellular content, that is the endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, all which are present inside the cell, it will leak out of the cell, and there will be necrosis. So this is called as necrosis. Okay, also there is inflammation in the surrounding tissue, because inflammatory cells will come to digest the dead cell. So that is inflammation in the surrounding tissue, and the enzymes to digest the cell are from the lysosomes of the dying cells, and also from the lysosomes of the leukocytes. Leukocytes are inflammatory cells. So the lysosomes of the leukocyte will secrete some enzymes which will help in digestion of the cell, dead cell, that is necrosis. Now again, this is the same diagram I told you. This is a normal cell. In necrosis, the cell will become enlarged, swelling of the cell, swelling of the mitochondria, swelling of the endoplasmic reticulum, the membrane bleeds. Finally, the cell will rupture, and all the organelle will come out. It will be digested by the inflammatory cell. This is necrosis. Apoptosis, the cell will become small in size. It will break into small bodies that are called as apoptotic bodies, and the apoptotic bodies will be digested by the phagocyte. So this is apoptosis. So what is how you will see the morphology of the injured cells? Okay, so whenever the cell is injured or whenever the cell undergoes necrosis, there is increased eosinophilia. Eosinophilia means pink color. Okay, for you should remember it is increased pink color. So the cell becomes pinkish in color, and that is because of the increased eosin binding to the denatured protein. The proteins inside the cell, they are damaged, and they will bind to the eosin stain. This is the eosin pink stain which we use for staining the cells tissue. So this eosin stain will bind to the damaged protein inside the cell, and it will give a pink color. That is, pink color means increased eosinophilia. And also there will be cell membrane damage. So what will happen to the organelles? There will be whorled phospholipid masses. There will be round masses, and which will be phagocytosized by the leukocyte or inflammatory cells, and they will be degraded into fatty acids. See, cell membrane is made up of phospholipid. You know, in physiology you must have studied cell membrane is made up of phospholipid. So what will happen? The phospholipid will convert into, it will be degraded into fatty acid, and the fatty acid, in that calcium salt will be deposited, and it will become calcified. So this is the morphology of the necrotic cell. Now see what happens to the nucleus. Now see, the most important, you can see this is the nucleus. This is the nucleus. Okay, this is the cell, this is the nucleus, this is the cytoplasm. In the cytoplasm we have mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, many organs, but in the center there is nucleus. So what will happen to the nucleus in the if the cell dies? What will happen to the nucleus? So there are three processes which happens to the nucleus. First is the pycnosis, then the karyorrhexis and karyolysis. So you should remember what is pycnosis, what is karyorrhexis, and what is karyolysis. So I will explain you with the help of a diagram. Now see this diagram. Okay, what is pycnosis? Pycnosis means, now see this is now just look at this diagram. This is the normal cell and this is the nucleus. You can see in the center there is a nucleus and this is the this is the cytoplasm and this is the cell. So so when the cell is injured, what will happen? First the nucleus becomes small in size. You can see the nucleus here is large, but then the nucleus becomes small in size. So when the nucleus becomes small in size, it becomes small in size. It is called as a pycnosis. It is called as a pycnosis. Pycnosis means the cell becomes small in size. Okay. Then what is karyorrhexis? Karyorrhexis means the small nucleus will break into small pieces. You can see the nucleus is breaking into small pieces. You can see that is called as the karyorrhexis. That is the fragmentation of the nucleus or breaking of the nucleus. Finally, what will happen? After this, the nucleus will be dissolved. The nucleus will disappear. These small fragments will disappear. This is called as the karyolysis. So the nucleus dissolves and disappears. So there are three processes. You can see the nucleus of the injured cell first it undergoes pycnosis. Pycnosis means the nucleus becomes small in size. Then karyorrhexis, the nucleus breaks into small pieces, and karyolysis, the nucleus dissolves and disappears. So here you can see this is the normal cell, then this is a nucleus. Now see, this is a nucleus. You can see this is the nucleus. This is a microscopic slide. So this is the nucleus, and this is the nucleus is normal size. Here, pycnosis, the nucleus becomes small in size. So here you can see from this size and this size, the nucleus is becoming small in size in this cell. Finally, here karyorrhexis, the nucleus is breaking into small pieces. Here you can see the nucleus is breaking into small pieces. You can see the small pieces. Okay, and finally the nucleus is disappearing. That is karyolysis. See in this cell there is no nucleus. The nuclear fragments or the nucleus has disappeared. So these all cells there is no nucleus. Okay, so this is karyolysis. So these three important you should remember what happens to the nucleus: pycnosis, karyorrhexis, and karyolysis. Pycnosis, the nucleus becomes small. Karyolysis, the nucleus breaks, and karyolysis, the nucleus disappears. Now we will see what are the types of necrosis. This is very important. There are 6 types of necrosis, and this is many times asked in your exam. Okay, what are the different types of necrosis? So you should remember coagulative necrosis, liquefactive necrosis, gangrenous necrosis, caseous necrosis, fat necrosis, and fibrinoid necrosis. So coagulative necrosis is seen in solid organs. Liquefactive, when there is some pus or liquid formation, when there is pus. Gangrenous, we will see there are 2 types, wet and dry. Caseous necrosis in case of infection, tuberculosis. Fat necrosis, whenever there is fat. Wherever there is fat necrosis like breast and pancreas. And fibrinoid necrosis in the blood vessel. So you should remember these 6 types of necrosis: coagulative, liquefactive, gangrenous, caseous, fat, and fibrinoid. So we will see one each. Okay, first we will see the coagulative necrosis. So what is coagulative necrosis? Okay, coagulative necrosis is the necrosis which is present in solid organs. Which are the solid organs present in the body? So all are solid organs like heart, kidney, liver. Okay, these are all solid organs. So coagulative necrosis takes place in these organs, solid organs like liver, kidney, heart, except the brain. Brain does not undergo coagulative necrosis. It will undergo liquefactive necrosis. So coagulative necrosis is present in all the solid organs like heart, kidney, liver, but not the brain, except the brain. So what will happen? The tissue architecture, the organ is preserved, but the dead cells are there in the organ, and the dead cells are digested by the lysosomal enzymes of the inflammatory cell, that is the leukocytes. So the dead cells are digested by the lysosomes of the leukocytes. So see, coagulative necrosis. Coagulative necrosis, it is common in heart. Whenever the patient gets heart attack, you must have heard of this name, heart attack. That is called a myocardial infarction. Heart muscle is called as myocardium, and infarction is necrosis. Okay, infarction is necrosis whenever there is blood supply to the cell becomes less, it undergoes necrosis. That is called as the infarction. You will learn further. Okay, so what are the dead cells? The dead cells. Now see, this is coagulative necrosis. It is present in solid organs, especially in the heart. Now see this diagram. You can see the heart. These are the heart muscle fibers. You can see elongated muscle fibers. You can see they are long. The heart muscle, they are elongated muscle fibers. And see, this is the nucleus. You can see this is the nucleus. This is the nucleus, and there is the heart. The muscle fibers are elongated, long. So this is a normal heart muscle. Okay, this is the normal heart muscle. Now, what will happen when the undergoes necrosis? I told you what happens to the nucleus. The nucleus disappears, right? So you can see here. This is the heart muscle. You can see this is the long heart muscle, and you are not seeing any nucleus. The nucleus is disappeared. These are the inflammatory cells. These are the neutrophils or the macrophages which are coming and which will digest the cell afterwards. But these are the inflammatory cell. But inside the cell there is no nucleus. You can see no nucleus inside the muscle cell. No nucleus. The nucleus has disappeared. Okay. Whereas here you can see in the muscle there is a nucleus. Okay. So all of you are understanding or no? Yes?
May you repeat this, please?
Yes? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so see here, this is a normal heart muscle where you will see nucleus and the heart muscle is there. Okay, but here the nucleus, whenever the cell dies, the nucleus disappears. So you will see cell with no nucleus. Okay, so this is the necrosis. This is myocardial infarction, and this is the inflammatory cells. So this is coagulative necrosis. Here you can see this is the heart muscle, and see this is the red color. This muscle is a normal muscle, but here this whitish or yellowish color area, in this area the heart muscle has undergone the cell has become dead. The cells have died, and this is the myocardial infarction. So this whole area of the heart muscle, this is the ventricle. Okay, now we have take a cut section of the heart muscle. Okay, so this yellowish area, this is the area where the heart muscle has died, and this is the necrosis of the heart muscle, that is infarction, myocardial infarction. This muscle is normal, whereas this area is the myocardial infarction. This yellowish area, this area the cells have died. If you take a small cut section, small tissue, and observe under a microscope, you will see this picture. The cells, the nucleus have disappeared. If you take a cut section from here, in this you will see like normal heart muscle with nucleus. But if you take a cut section, small tissue from here, and observe under a microscope, so you will see like this. The nucleus is disappearing.
Doctor.
Now the coagulant. This is the kidney. Now see, this is the kidney. The same thing. This is the kidney. This is the normal. The cut section of the kidney. This is the normal kidney. Okay, this is the normal This is the normal area of the kidney, and this area, this triangular shape yellowish area, this area has undergone damage. The cells in this area have died, and this is necrosis. Here also, if you take now see, this is a microscopy. Always we have to do the microscopy. We have to see the gross also by eyes also, and also under the microscope to confirm whether it is necrosis. So here you can see this N is normal area. Now this area is normal, where you can see these are the kidney cells. You can see a lot of nucleus. You can see this bluish are the nucleus. Okay, these bluish are the nucleus. Whereas this area there is undergone necrosis. So you can see this there is no nucleus in this area. You can see no blue color in this area, and these blue color, these are the inflammatory cells. Okay, these are the inflammatory cells surrounding the cell, which will come to digest the cell. So this cell, there is no nucleus. This area, see this area, whole area, there is no nucleus in the cell. Whereas in this area, a lot of nucleus in the cell is there. So this is a normal area, and this area, the nucleus has disappeared. So this area has undergone necrosis, and these are the inflammatory cells. So this is the area of necrosis, and this is a normal cell. This is coagulative necrosis. Coagulative necrosis means necrosis in solid organs like heart, kidney, liver. Now coming to the liquefactive necrosis. Liquefactive necrosis means whenever there is liquid formation like pus. Okay, whenever there is some liquid formation along with necrosis, the dead cell will undergo autolysis. Means the dead cell will die and they will form a liquid. That is called as a liquefactive necrosis. Okay, the dead cell will die and they will form a liquid like pus or any liquid of dead cell. That is called as a liquefactive necrosis from the name itself, and it occurs in the brain, especially in the brain, and also in infection. You have finished your PBL. So in PBL there was the pyogenic bacteria which forms pus, staphylococcus. Okay, so whenever there is pus formation, infection, it is a liquefactive necrosis. And also the brain undergoes liquefactive necrosis. So in your exam they have many times asked you which necrosis does the brain undergo. So the brain undergoes liquefactive necrosis. Which necrosis the heart undergoes? Heart undergoes the coagulative necrosis. Kidney, coagulative necrosis. But brain, it is a liquefactive necrosis. Okay, so the liquefactive necrosis occurs in the brain, and also some infection because pus formation is there. And due to pus formation, especially the bacterial infection, Staphylococcus aureus, the bacterial infection, it forms a yellowish color fluid, and that is called as a pus. And this pus is collection of neutrophils. Now here you can see this is the brain. Okay, this is the cut section of the brain, and see this area. Now see, this is the normal area. Okay, these are the normal area, but this area has undergone necrosis. Okay, this area of the brain, the cells have died. It has undergone necrosis, and you can see collection of fluid. You can see the collection of small little fluid is there. That's why it is called as the liquefactive necrosis. Okay, so this is the area of the brain which is undergoing liquefactive necrosis. And if you see see a small tissue and observe under the microscope, see these are the normal brain cell. But this area, it has complete the brain cells are absent, and they have decreased in number, and they have undergone necrosis, and they will be digested by the inflammatory cells. So this area, there are no brain cells. This area has undergone necrosis, whereas this area you are still seeing the brain cells. Some the cells are seen, but this area no cells. So this area has undergone necrosis. This area is necrosis with liquid formation, liquefactive necrosis. Here also, this is the brain. You can see this area. This area is liquefactive necrosis. Collection of this area has undergone liquefactive necrosis of the brain. This is also brain. So this collection. This is necrotic area with fluid, and this is also fluid collection in the brain. This is the liquefactive necrosis. Now this is also abscess formation. Abscess formation means collection of pus. Okay, sometimes in the tissue, when due to infection, there is collection of pus, and that is the yellowish color pus. If you take the yellowish color pus liquid and observe under the microscope, you will. This is the pus. This is the pus. It will contain a lot of neutrophils. Neutrophils means inflammatory cells. So a lot of neutrophil collection is the pus. So this is pus and lot of neutrophil. These are the all neutrophil cells, which is the which form the pus. So liquefactive necrosis is common in the brain and infections. Now gangrenous necrosis, the third type of necrosis, gangrenous necrosis. Okay, so now gangrenous necrosis happens to the limb. Limb means to the leg. Okay, to the leg, especially to the leg, and especially in diabetes patient. Okay, to the leg, when the blood supply to that organ has blocked. Okay, when the blood supply to the leg decreases, that organ undergoes necrosis, and it is called as gangrenous necrosis. Okay, whenever there is coagulative necrosis, it is called as the dry gangrene, and whenever there is liquefactive, there is the wet gangrene. So gangrenous necrosis are of two types. I will explain you. Especially, you should remember it is especially common in the leg. Now see this picture. Okay, now see, this is the leg. Especially in diabetes patient, what happened? The blood supply to the leg it decrease. Okay, because the blood vessels are blocked. So if the blood vessel is blocked, no blood supply to this part of the leg, and it will all the cells will die, and they will become, see this area becoming black and dry. You can see this is becoming black and dry, and this is called a dry gangrene. Okay, now what happens sometimes? This is the dry gangrene. Sometimes what happens after the dry gangrene, the infection will come. Okay, and it will form pus. When the infection comes and forms pus, yellowish color pus, then it is called as, it forms wet gangrene. Wet means liquid. Getting it? Okay. Are you understanding?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what will happen when the blood supply to the organ leg is decreased? The leg will become dry and black in color. This is the dry gangrene. Okay, but when the infection will come, bacteria, and it will form pus, it is a wet gangrene. So gangrene are of two types. So dry gangrene and wet gangrene. Wet gangrene is due to infection and forming of pus. Now the fourth type of necrosis, that is the caseous necrosis. Okay, caseous necrosis especially seen in tuberculosis. This is also many times asked in your exam. What is caseous necrosis? So the caseous necrosis, it is seen in tuberculosis. Okay, it is seen in tuberculosis. Especially in this infection, you will see caseous necrosis. Okay, so you should remember whenever in your exam, caseous necrosis is present in which infection, you should always remember tuberculosis. So what will happen in tuberculosis? You will see, so, and especially common in the lung. So see, this is the lung. You can see this is the lung area. Okay, this is the lung, and you can see this soft cheese-like material. You know cheese, okay, like cheese. It appears like a cheese-like material. So this area appears like cheese-like material, and this cheese-like material, this area has undergone necrosis, and it is called the caseous necrosis, and especially common in tuberculosis. So this, so caseous necrosis common in tuberculosis infection, and with your eyes, it will look like cheese, cottage cheese-like whitish appearance. And if you observe under the microscope. Okay, see, if you take a small tissue from this area, okay, if you take a small tissue from this area and observe under the microscope, okay, if you take a small tissue from this area, observe under the microscope, see, you will find like this. You will find central pink area. This is called as the caseous necrosis. Okay, the central area is the caseous necrosis. Then it is surrounded by lymphocytes. Okay, these are the lymphocytes. And granuloma. Granuloma means you will see a lot of giant cell. Giant cell means in one cell there are many nuclei. Many nucleus in one cell, that is called the giant cell. And epithelioid cell. Epithelioid cells are spindle-shaped elongated cells which are macrophages. Epithelioid cells are macrophages. So what will so you should remember the caseous necrosis. It is called the you will see granuloma. What is the granuloma? You will study further also granulomatous infection. So what is the granuloma? Granuloma will have central area of caseous necrosis, which is the pink area of necrosis, and it will be surrounded by lymphocytes, macrophages, that is the epithelioid cells, and also the giant cells. Giant cells are cells with many nucleus. Okay, so this is this area. If you see this whole is called the granuloma. So you will see many granulomas. You will see many granulomas in this area. So see, this is a granuloma. You can see this central area is the pink area necrosis surrounded by lymphocytes. You can see the lymphocyte, okay, and macrophages and giant cells. So this is called as a granuloma. So especially in you should remember caseous necrosis, two important things. With eyes it will appear cheese-like white in color. It is seen in tuberculosis, and you will see granuloma. What is a granuloma? Granuloma is central area of necrosis, caseous necrosis, surrounded by lymphocyte, epithelioid cell, which are macrophages, and giant cells. So this is a granuloma. Now another type of necrosis, fat necrosis. Fat necrosis is present whenever there is fat. The fat cell they die. That is called as a fat necrosis. So fat necrosis will be present. Fat tissue is also called as the adipose tissue. Okay. So whenever in which organ there is fat, it will undergo fat necrosis. So which are the organs? Breast has a lot of fat, and also the pancreas. These two organs, breast and pancreas, have a lot of fat. So in these organs there is fat necrosis. So what is fat necrosis? It is a necrosis of the adipose tissue, necrosis of the fat tissue, and it can be due to trauma. Whenever there is injury, whenever there is trauma to the breast, so the fat cell will die, it will rupture, and there will be traumatic necrosis. Secondly, they can also die due to enzymes. Whenever there is infection in the pancreas, the enzymes will be released, and the enzymes will damage the fat cell. So this is called as a fat necrosis. So you should remember two important organs where the fat necrosis are present: breast and pancreas. Now see what happens, whenever the fat tissue or die, whenever the adipose tissue, fat tissue die, fatty acids are released. Okay, the adipose tissue contains fatty acids. So fatty acid will be released whenever there is injury to the fatty tissue. The fatty acid will be released, and the fatty acid will combine with calcium. Okay, and they will form white calcium deposits. So you can see here, this is the fat, and you can see this white chalky deposit. You can see these white areas, white deposit like chalk. So these are the white areas of fat necrosis. What happens? The fat cells here in this area are damaged, the fatty acids are released, and the fatty acid will combine with calcium, and they will form white calcium salts. So this is the calcium salts deposition, and this is the fatty area of necrosis. And if you take a small cut section and observe under the microscope, see these are the normal fat cell. You can see these are the normal fat cells. But here the fat cells have ruptured. You can see all the fat cells have died. They have been ruptured. So this area is the fat necrosis. In this area, the fatty acid will be released. It will combine with calcium, and they will form calcium deposit, whitish deposit, which you will see with your eyes. And under the microscope, you will see all the fat cells have ruptured. So this is fat necrosis. Fat necrosis is present in breast and also in pancreas. And the final type of necrosis, you have the fibrinoid necrosis. Fibrinoid necrosis is deposition of fibrin material. Fibrin is a protein which is present, which will be deposited in the blood vessel. Fibrinoid necrosis is especially present in the blood vessel. Now it is an immune reaction. What do you mean by immune reaction? There is you will learn in your microbiology. There are antigens and antibodies. Okay, in the body, these antigens and antibody will combine, and they will be deposited in the blood vessel, in the wall of the blood vessel, and they will be deposited in the form of pink material, and this is called the fibrinoid necrosis. So you can see this is the blood vessel. This is the lumen of the blood vessel. This is the lumen of the blood vessel from where the blood will be passing. This is the lumen of the blood vessel, and this is the wall of the blood vessel. So in the wall, you will have this pink material deposition. You can see this is the pink deposited material. So this pink deposition material, it is a fibrinoid necrosis. Here also you can see this is the lumen, and this is the blood. You can see these are the RBCs. This is the blood in the lumen. Okay, this is the blood in the lumen, and this is the wall of the blood vessel. So what will happen in the wall? This pink material is deposited. You can see this pink material which is deposited. It is due to immune reaction, and this is the fibrinoid necrosis. Okay, so if you are asked in your exam what is fibrinoid necrosis, you should say it is due to antigen and antibody immune reaction, and it is present in the blood vessel, wall of the blood vessel, and deposition of a pink material in the wall of the blood vessel, and this pink material is fibrinoid necrosis. So what will happen? After now we have finished all the types of necrosis. Okay, so what will happen to the necrotic cells? Okay, what will there are two fates of necrotic cells. What will happen to the necrotic cell after the cell dies? So what will happen to the first will be the necrotic cell will be digested by phagocytosis. By the leukocytes. The leukocyte will come, inflammatory cells will come, and they will digest the dead cells, and they will remove the dead cells from the body. So first is this. Secondly, what will happen? I told you, like fat necrosis, they will combine with calcium, and they will become calcified, and this is called as the calcification. So there are two fates or two types of what will happen to the necrotic cells. So first it will undergo phagocytosis. This is the most common. The necrotic cell will be digested by the leukocytes, and the second is they will combine with calcium and they will become calcified white deposit. That is called the calcification. So this is the features of necrosis and apoptosis. Apoptosis will be covered in the next lecture. So what I will just explain you the differences. Necrosis and apoptosis. Both are cell death only. In both the cell dies, but here the cell dies due to injury, and here the cell kills itself. That is the suicide. Okay, the cell kills itself. Apoptosis. So what will happen in necrosis? The cell is enlarged. I told you in the starting diagram. The water will come and the cell will enlarge. The cell will enlarge, and also the organs inside the cell will enlarge. Whereas in apoptosis, the cell will be reduced in size. Okay. Then in nucleus, what will happen? There is pycnosis. That is small size. The nucleus becomes small size. Karyorrhexis. The nucleus will break into small fragment, and karyolysis. The nucleus will disappear. But here, the nucleus there will be no pycnosis, only fragmentation. That is the karyorrhexis. There will be only fragmentation. Then plasma membrane is disrupted. I told you the plasma membrane will rupture, right? I told you, and because of which the cell membrane will rupture. All the cellular content, mitochondria, endoplasm will come out of the cell, and it will be digested by the leukocyte. Whereas here in apoptosis, the cell membrane will not be damaged; it will be intact. Okay, cellular contents like mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, all the cellular content will be come out of the cell because the cell has ruptured, and there will be enzymatic digestion by the leukocyte. Here, the cell content will not be released. It will be inside the apoptic bodies, small bodies which are formed by apoptosis. It will be released in apoptic bodies, and it will be digested by the leukocytes. Inflammatory cells, yes, inflammation is present. It will be digested because necrosis, inflammation will be present. But here, apoptosis, no inflammation is present. Here, inflammatory cells will be coming. Here, no. Okay, and what will be? It is due to injury. You know, this is necrosis usually due to injury to the cell. And here, whenever there is there is DNA damage, whenever the inside the cell is defective. You know, whenever the inside the cell is defective, the cell kills itself. In the nucleus there is DNA. So when the DNA is damaged or the DNA is not proper inside the cell will kill itself. So this is due to this is called as apoptosis, and this is due to outside injury, that is pathological injury. So this finishes this one. I will take your attendance, so please don't go. If you have any question, you can ask me. Okay? Let me take the picture, okay? Don't go, because otherwise your attendance will be missed. All of you understood or no?
Doctor, I have a question, please.
1 minute. I will just take and then just. Don't go. Yes. What question you have?
In slide number 13.
Slide number
13.
Which one? This one?
Coagulated.
This one?
No.
Oh?
Coagulated necrosis.
Okay. Coagulated necrosis. This one?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me.
In the normal picture, the deep stained spots, these are the myocytes, right?
Yes, these are the myocytes. Myocyte means muscle cells.
Yeah. But in the right side, there is no myocytes. All of them are the inflammatory cells.
Which this area, normal or necrosis you are telling?
The necrosis area.
Necrosis, all are necrotic area. This all are necrotic area, because you are not seeing the nucleus. You can see here you are not seeing the nucleus. Okay, these are all abnormal areas. There is abnormal. The muscle has died. All this area. Whereas here you can see the nucleus. See here nucleus, this nucleus. here is the nucleus, here is the nucleus. So there is all nucleus present here. So the cell is alive. See, nucleus is like, nucleus is the soul. Nucleus is the soul of the cell. If the nucleus is not there, that means the cell has died. So the important feature is nucleus, because the nucleus is the main, like the brain of the cell. It will control all the functions of the cell. So if the nucleus is not there, automatically it will, like, if the brain is not there, the patient is brain dead. So he is not alive. So similarly, the nucleus is the same thing. The nucleus is the brain of the main organ. So if the nucleus is not there, cell has died. So this is the nucleus. You can see if the nucleus is present here, but here no nucleus. Okay.
But doctor,
yes.
In the normal picture, in between the myocytes, the nuclei in between the myocytes.
Yes. This one you are telling, right?
Yeah.
You can see this one. Okay, right?
Yes.
Yes, these are also, these are also nucleus only, but sometimes, you will learn in your histology of heart cell, when you will do the CVS system, some of the nuclei, they are at the periphery, So some of the nucleus, they are not in the center, they are at the periphery. So you will learn in your further when you will do the cardiovascular system, heart system. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
And here, these are the inflammatory cells. So all of you understood all the type of necrosis?
Yes, doctor, yes.
This is the important 6 types: coagulative, liquefactive, gangrenous, caseous, fat, and fibrinoid. Coagulative in solid organs like kidney, brain, heart, and liver. Liquefactive in the brain and infection. Gangrenous in the foot, wet gangrene and diagangrene. When there is infection, it is a wet gangrene. Caseous necrosis in tuberculosis, cheese-like material, and granuloma. Fat necrosis in pancreas and breast, and fibrinoid in the blood vessel, like the deposition of the fibrin material. So these are this is important. You should remember. So in the next lecture you will do apoptosis. Today we have covered only the necrosis. In the necrosis, I told you the cell will increase in size and it will rupture, and all the organ will come out. It will be digested by inflammatory cells. Apoptosis, the cell will become small in size. It will break into small pieces. No rupture of the cell, no rupture of the base of the cell membrane, and these bodies will be digested by the phagocyte. And what happens to the nucleus in this one? Nucleus is very important because it will undergo pycnosis, small size of the nucleus, fragmentation, karyorrhexis, karyolysis. The nucleus disappears. And these are the types of necrosis. Coagulative in the heart. This is the area of necrosis in the heart. Coagulative, again coagulative necrosis, the nucleus disappearing here. Liquefactive in the brain and the infection. You can see in the brain a collection of fluid. This area is the necrosis, and this is also the area of coagulative necrosis. Finally, the gangrenous necrosis.